This is it. This is the trip report of my most intense psychedelic journey up to date. It was the 7th night of drinking on my 14-day ayahuasca retreat. And this is video number 5 of this series. If you haven't watched the other ones, you can click right here. Hey, I'm Virgo and this is Psychedelic Actualization. On this channel we talk about topics like self-realization, self-actualization and working with psychedelics to live a more authentic and fulfilling life. And today I want to share my most intense and my most serious and terrifying journey that I've gone through. And I still struggle to find the words. And I am still integrating this experience. It was an experience of complete God realization and an experience of facing death in a way that was absolutely insane. So it was on my 14-day ayahuasca retreat. If you are planning on going to an ayahuasca experience yourself and you need a little bit of help with the preparation, you can download a worksheet that I put together. It is in the video description down below. It's completely for free and it will help you prepare for your ayahuasca experience. So, ceremony number 7 on my ayahuasca retreat. I asked for a little bit of a bigger dose again, even though my last experience was a quite intense physical experience. And the experience started really peaceful, really quiet, really kind of mild and blissful. And I was focusing on that bliss. And the more I focused in on that bliss of the experience, the more I awoke to truth, kind of. And the tears were running down my face. And I was having a complete God realization. And a complete realization of love. Because I was contemplating the nature of God and the nature of love. And the deeper I contemplated on it, and the deeper I was letting myself go and focusing in on that bliss, the more that awakening and that realization unfolded. And it was a really significant awakening into the nature of love. It was a very basic insight of God is love and of love is everything. Because existence is love and God is love. And the universe and the whole of existence created itself out of love. And everything that is included in existence is created out of that love. It is part of that love. And this love includes everything. And we are not only part of that love, but also the source of that love. And that was a really precious moment for me. It was a deep awakening into the nature of love and into the nature of reality. But that awakening only lasted for a very short period of time. Because after that, it got rough. Like it got really, really rough.
Basically what happened is I would kind of start to feel bad and it was just like a process of letting go so deeply, surrendering so deeply my life, like to let go of my life.
And from this moment on, there was a long period where I thought I was gonna die. And I was not only thinking that I was gonna die, but in my experience, I was convinced that I am dying right now. And that was absolutely terrifying and an absolutely serious moment, because it was leading me into a process of letting go, into a very deep, probably the deepest process of letting go that I've gone through so far. And I was just asked of letting go of everything to let go into death itself. And it was a little play and a little dance between letting go into death and holding on to my life. And I was kind of switching between those two over and over again. It's like, it's okay if I die right here, right now. And I was kind of praying and kind of going back and forth between this letting go and this holding on to life. And this is where things got really weird, because the medicine and that experience was taking me so far out of my body and out of my sense of body awareness, that everything that happened on this physical plane, in this physical reality, seemed like so far away for me, and it seemed like a hallucination because I couldn't grasp and hold on to this physical reality anymore. So really funny moment was, well, it was not funny in the moment, but a really interesting moment was when the facilitators, for example, interacted with me. I thought I had acoustic and tactile hallucinations. For example, one facilitator, he was touching my knee. And as he was touching my knee, kind of putting his hand on my heart, I thought that it was a tactile hallucination because I was not connected to my body anymore, and my body kind of having these sensations and kind of moving by itself without me being connected to my body felt absolutely weird. I was like, oh, okay, this is going too far. It's like, this is starting to get like tactile hallucinations. What is going on with that? And I was not realizing that it was the facilitator. And another facilitator, she told me to be quiet because I was making weird sounds to kind of let go deeper into the process, and kind of weird sounds just came out of me. And she was telling me to be quiet. It's like, Virgo, can you hear me? Please, could you be quiet? And I didn't have the concept of humans anymore. I was thinking it was an acoustic hallucination from ayahuasca. I was like, oh, ayahuasca knows my name. And she can even talk English. It's like, that's nice. This is really interesting. And I didn't have the concept that other humans were even able to talk to me as a human, because I was so far out of that concept of humanness while I was facing my death. And that was really interesting and also really funny, because the facilitators were telling me to be quiet, for example. And I thought in that context of my experience, I thought I had to quiet my mind and my thoughts a little bit more to let go deeper into death. And I was like, yeah, I can be quiet, because I was thinking the ayahuasca was guiding me. It's like, I can be quiet right now. And I was still continuing to make those sounds. And I didn't realize, it didn't compete to me that they meant that I had to stop the noises, because we were in a ceremony with other people in kind of silent darkness, right? And those noises, they can distract other people in their journey. Some people also report back that those sounds of other people going through their experiences are kind of helpful, but also other people report back that those noises can be really distracting them. And I didn't want to distract others, but I was so immersed in my experience that others were not playing a role anymore in my experience. And those sounds were just coming out of me from deep within. And it was like, I don't exactly remember, but I cannot like usually make those sounds. It was like a deep or something like this. This is not exactly what it was, but it was something like this. And these weird noises of like were just coming out of me, and they kind of helped me in my experience to face death. and to let go deeper and surrender deeper into death. And I started to kind of play with these sounds as well.
I had some interesting sounds coming out from me. I was like playing with sound a little bit, and then this voice, this kind of sound came out of me like from deep inside. It's interesting what we can do with sound. And like I was enjoying it. And ayahuasca would like start to play with sound. In a sense.
So they just really tried to just get me quiet, and I just didn't compete for me, and the experience got more and more intense, and I was just like, yeah, I can be quiet. I was just continuing to make those sounds, so it was really hard for them to kind of calm me down and quiet me down. But at one point, they kind of successfully did it, and I was quieting myself down and the sounds down. And I don't know, like now in retrospect, if that was a good thing or not, because in retrospect it felt like they were putting a limit onto my self-expression in that experience, and I would rather be able and free to completely express the experience as it unfolded and however it felt like it was natural. But also I can totally understand that other people don't want to be distracted in their process by some weird loud ass noises that I was making. And as it got more and more intense, it got more and more scary, and I was seriously scared and terrified for a bit of that experience.
And I was scared for a bit. It's like, this is some real shit. And I thought about like never doing psychedelics again, not working with the medicine. But it's such a good medicine. It's like I'm never gonna do psychedelics again. And I was like going through the misery of what that would mean for my life. The YouTube channel, my passion, my life purpose. Just like shattered with one difficult ayahuasca experience. That was just the start, you know. It was just the start. And that's so crazy.
And during this whole experience, like the main theme was facing death, but it was accompanied with so many weird experiences and sensations and just like scenarios that were happening that completely took me out and kind of confused me, like totally confused me. One example is from my perspective, I experienced either teleportation or a time skip. So I was lying in my bed and I was kind of touching it. And as I was touching it and I was rubbing it, at one move I was rubbing the bed and the mattress, and right the next second I was feeling grass, and I was like, this is a funny tactile hallucination as well. I was just like touching the mattress, and all of a sudden it felt like earth, like grass. And then I realized, like, wait a second, like, this is grass. I'm outside, and I didn't know how I got here. And this, it was just mind-blowing and terrifying as well. Because, I mean, just imagine the potentiality of where this could go. For example, when you're alone and you have an experience of a time skip, of you going somewhere or just being somewhere and you don't even remember how you got there because you're kind of so far out of your body. And that was a really scary but also really interesting moment. Because from my perspective, it was a teleportation or a time skip. Because I was not conscious during the way of, or how I got there, how I went outside. And I just continued, I just didn't care, I just continued tripping outside. And I was just on my knees, praying, kind of smashing my head on the ground, rubbing it into the earth. I even had like a little wound and my like scars everywhere on my head because I was just smashing my head on the ground so much because I was in that praying position, in that child pose position of just like praying and praying and praying. And also a really interesting part was the ikaros from the shamans that they were singing. They actually started to sing when I made the switch from the God realization to facing death. And they didn't stop to sing the whole night. And it was so nice. It was such a powerful singing of the ikaros. And all the other nights, all the other 6 experiences at ceremonies, sometimes they would sing a little bit and then they would be quiet again. And then they would sing a little bit. Sometimes they were almost quiet for the whole night. But this time, from the experience where my intense experience started of facing death, right until the very end of the experience, they were singing with full power. And it's interesting because I was asking them afterwards, they can just sense the whole energy in the room and kind of notice when somebody is going through a very intense experience. And those ikaros, they really helped me to get through this experience. And also a very interesting thing is, when I was outside, the ikaros were just as loud and as intense as when I was inside. So I was hearing them clearly, and I was thinking, it's like I'm going through such an intense experience. The shaman or one shaman should be like right here next to me, like singing for me. That's what it felt like. But I was told afterwards, and I realized afterwards, the shamans were inside the whole time. But from my perspective, I mean, it was a teleportation from inside to outside. And then from my perspective, there was a shaman right beside me and singing, because I was clearly and loudly hearing the ikaros that he was singing. And that was a really interesting thing. Because like, how did that come? Because usually the other nights when I was going outside, the ikaros were getting a little bit more quiet and further away, and this time it was just completely present. And it made me question, like, is it just like on these other realms, for those ikaros created kind of a space? It's a really interesting topic. Like, let's talk and think about it another time. And one really moment was like when I was hearing the ikaros outside so intensely, and they helped me to get through my experience. I kind of wanted to greet the shamans in hyperspace, because I was in hyperspace and they're in hyperspace. And I thought, like, I was just sending out greetings to the shamans, like, hey, if you see me here in hyperspace, thank you for singing, please continue. Thank you very much. So that happened, and yeah, I think then I was also doing weird stuff with my body. Even when I was inside, I was just doing weird stuff with my body the whole time.
Yeah, at one point I was like even I was inside. I was like biting my finger and kind of eating myself, and then I had these horrible thoughts of cannibalism and that I would, the image that I would eat myself, and I kind of did bite myself a little bit, and you're just like doing all sorts of weird stuff with my body.
And like I talked about, like the facilitators. I mean, there were like 2 shamans that were singing and 2 facilitators. that were kind of facilitating all the participants. And like it was interesting because they were kind of quieting me down, kind of trying to help me to get through this very intense experience, right? Because they were noticing that I was going through a really difficult and challenging experience. And I thought in my state of being convinced that I would die right now, that they knew the experience that I was going through. But afterwards I was realizing that I didn't tell them that I was going through death, that I was facing my death, and that like they didn't know that I was facing death. And that made the whole dynamic between us kind of weird. Because for example, when one facilitator was putting his hand on my heart, I was thinking that he was checking my heart rate to make sure that I continue living. And it was just like this whole weird concept. I was just like, should I tell anybody that I'm dying right now? Well, it doesn't matter anyways, because I am dying. And at one point, a facilitator said, it's like, I need you to stop right now. And he meant the sounds, or just like, I don't know what he meant, but if from my point of view, I thought he meant that I had to stop living, that I just had to stop the noise of my mind and let go into death. And that's probably very good advice, and I really tried to do it, and it was kind of at the edge of doing it, but I couldn't push through that edge. I was still like dancing between life and death. And yeah, but like without the facilitators also, it would have been a very scary experience. Like, I am glad that I had this the most intense experience of my life, in a setting where there were people who were watching over me. There were shamans around who were kind of knowing what they were doing in hyperspace, kind of holding the space for that. Because alone it would have been like weird and very, very, very scary. Because I was going through a transformation of consciousness.
The transformation of consciousness was absolutely mind-blowing. Of what is possible. I think I didn't went that far in any psychedelic trip. And yeah, it's scary how far it can take you out. But it's so interesting as well. Like, there was some points I was just like enjoying and really being just in wonder and amazed of what just happens, like this miracle that is happening. And then I would think I would die again, letting go of my life.
And while I was outside, I was kind of praying, and praying is a really interesting concept, right? Because prayer was like the natural state of my being during that experience. Like, I didn't decide to actively pray, but prayer was just the natural state of being I was in. And I don't know what I was praying to, but I didn't know like what else to do in that situation. I was praying kind of to a higher power, to God, to the medicine, to myself. And just, what is prayer? Like, that's also a very good question. But I think for me, prayer consisted of being grateful for that experience, kind of embracing it, accepting it, letting go and surrendering. That was the form of prayer that I was in during this experience. And there's a really nice quote from Rumi. He said, "When the world pushes you to your knees, you are in the perfect position to pray." And that ayahuasca experience definitely pushed me to my knees, and I was in the perfect position to pray, and that's exactly what I did, inside and outside. And also, funny story that those people told me afterwards, even I was just not noticing it anymore. When I was outside, a facilitator was just watching over me, and at one point she came, and I thought the ayahuasca was talking to me again, because I didn't know, like, it just took me some time again to realize that there are human beings, and those human beings can talk to me. And the facilitator, like after half an hour or an hour outside, she was trying to get me inside into my bed again. And she was like, would you like to come inside? And I was just like, in my mind, I was completely gone into hyperspace. I'm like, inside where? And she's like, inside the Maloka, there's your bed. I'm like, a bed? Yeah, would you like to go to your bed? And I'm like, a bed? And in my mind, it was like the heavenly bed, my deathbed. I'm like, my deathbed? No, no. It's like, I'm fine here, right where I am. And she's like, but inside there's a ceremony going on. And I'm like, a ceremony? Cool. But just let me be here. Because I didn't have the concept of my bed. I didn't have the concept of a ceremony, of an ayahuasca ceremony going on. I was just in my experience of facing death in this moment, wherever I was. I mean, I didn't even knew how I got outside. But at one point, she got me to go inside, and I did. And then it got to a point where it just intensified even more. And at that point, I didn't even thought about like that it was possible that it intensified even more, but it came in waves, and it intensified even more and more and more. And at one point, I thought I would lose consciousness, which is probably the point where I would have broken through, kind of, into whatever. But at that point, I was so terrified that I was not ready to let go into that. Because it was, the thought of fainting was just too scary.
I really thought I was physically dying. It's so interesting. How does it do that? You know, just rips your ego apart. It's humbling. It was absolutely humbling. It scared me so much that I had the thought I would never take psychedelics again. Yeah, so I would just like thought that I would faint, and this thought of fainting was really scary, because that's like the real death, you know, losing consciousness in a sense, and not like being able to perceive anything. Well, I bet I didn't faint, but almost. Incredible. What the fuck?
Because I could let go of a lot of stuff, and that was what I was doing the whole night. I was like, okay, letting go into death. But it's like, what about my family? And I'm like, okay, I can die right now. I can let go of my family. But what about my best friend? Okay, I can let go of my best friend. But what about my life purpose? Okay, I can let go of my life purpose. But what about, like, whatever? It's like this beautiful earth. And I was just going through letting go of all these human things. But then at this point, it was asking me to let go of awareness and perception itself. And because it was happening so gradually, I was just not ready to let go into that experience of losing consciousness and of fainting. I was just like, I'm dying right now, but I don't want to lose my perception of dying right now. Let me be aware of dying for the next couple of hours, but I don't want to lose my consciousness right here. And I had experiences where I lost consciousness. For example, my first Bufo 5-MeO DMT experience. You can watch the trip report right here. But losing consciousness in that state and being catapulted into nothingness was just happening in an instant. This was happening gradually. And I was still in my body a little bit because I was kind of facing the challenges that were occurring in this reality, like facilitators talking to me, having an experience of finding myself outside. And when I was inside again, it got to a point where I had thoughts of puking, and I had the feeling that I had to puke and shit, and I couldn't move, like no way I could move, and I had to kind of face the thoughts of like worrying about puking and shitting myself, because that happens to people on ayahuasca. And I was like, oh, damn it, well, I'm dying right now. It's like, it doesn't matter if I shit myself or puke myself now. And it was really like difficult to navigate those sensations of the human body while being so far out. And that made the process of letting go into losing consciousness a little bit more difficult, I think. And I like usually I had a bucket, but I didn't like even realize where that bucket is. So I was just, a bucket, please, anybody give me a bucket. So I took a bucket. I had a bucket in my head. So I was kind of, the whole visual field was distorted. I could barely like see where the bucket is. And I vomited into the bucket. Really difficult vomit and purge. And then I was not even putting the bucket back down onto the ground. I was just having the bucket in my bed, smashing it around. So I was sitting in my own kind of purge and puking. It was not that much. It was just like a little bit. I noticed it the next day. But it was a difficult experience. It was so challenging. But still, even though it was so challenging, I was still grateful during the experience for the medicine. And I was still being able to kind of appreciate it during and after.
As difficult as it was, just step by step getting through this experience, it was incredible. What the fuck, man? What just happened? But I'm so grateful for the medicine, that it exists, that it teaches us how to love. Love is the answer, always. Death is infinite love. Everything is infinite love. It's heavy to work with the medicine, but it's so rewarding, so fulfilling. Wow. It got so intense. It's incredible. Almost too intense for me. And I didn't think that was possible. And yeah, I wanted to go far and it took me far. It's nice. Overall, I enjoyed the experience, even though it was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. Yeah, very, very grateful for the medicine, for working in me, on me, transforming, purging.
And yeah, that's basically all that happened. That's at least all the details that I remember. I think there's a lot of more stuff that happened in that experience. For example, like my friend told me that at one time I was going outside and I was peeing, and then I was kind of falling right where I peed. Like I was falling down on my knees and putting my head down on the ground right where I peed. I was just peeing and then like just falling down on the ground. And just like little stuff and details like that happened. And it's kind of embarrassing to talk about it, but that just shows, I think, the seriousness of how far out it took me and how serious those experiences can get. And when the ceremony ended, I was still outside, kind of somewhere, praying by myself. And then I noticed that some other people were coming and they were sitting by my side, just like I noticed their presence, and I was still like pretty far out. I was still pretty high and deep into my experience. But the ceremony ended, and when the ceremony ended, kind of the shamans left. Everything kind of calmed down a little bit. Like I was in the midst of this intense experience, and then all of a sudden I noticed other people were around me, and I'm like, oh, wait, is it over? It's like it was a very, very spontaneous end to this intense experience. At least from being so far out to being still pretty damn deep into the experience, but able to navigate physical reality again. And we had a full moon. We were sitting in a circle, listening to a facilitator playing the hang. Beautiful music, beautiful full moon, just a beautiful scenery, and it's just like hanging out, joking around, reflecting upon what just happened. And I think it was a life-changing experience for me.
Yeah, it's life-changing. Life-changing in a way that I don't quite understand yet, but I felt it deep in my spirit, the transformation of consciousness. It's life-changing in a sense of my understanding of reality, because concepts like the physical body or the physical plane were just thrown out the window. It was just like this whole new world of spirit, um, which was scary, terrifying, but also very interesting and beautiful in a sense.
And then I wanted to go to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't go to sleep because of fear. Because of the fear of entering this deep experience of facing death again.
I was like, yes, still going on, still very intense, and I'm ready for it to stop. I'm ready for it to ease out and calm down. So we went, ate a banana, which was not so delicious, drank a coconut, and like here talking a little bit, and I still like had the feeling that I had to purge a little bit more and it would start again, and just like going through this, um, and just wanting to sleep because like it went on till 5 a.m. I felt the effects until I fell asleep. I was still like very dizzy, very not being able to walk, very straight, and yeah. So that was intense, and then I decided, like when I went to sleep, I decided to take a shower. The shower was nice, calming me down a little bit. Felt way better after the shower, and then I grabbed my phone and my headphones, went into the temple and put on music from Ayla Schäfer, and that was really helpful because it helped me to reflect, and the lyrics of Ayla Schäfer's songs are so beautiful, like so much resonance in that state of being with these songs. So I was just like listening to song after song after song, and that made me like feel way better, and that I was like listening to Ayla Schäfer till I fell asleep.
And I just couldn't believe what just happened. It was such a radical shift in consciousness. It was such a radical and terrifying and intense experience that it was really difficult to believe what just happened. And I think I did a pretty good job at letting go. Even though I was not able to fully let go into that experience and into the fainting and losing my consciousness, I still felt like I did a pretty good job at letting go.
It was the greatest lesson of love I've ever had, and a deep surrender, a deep sense of letting go. And I think I did a pretty good job, breathing through it, keeping the silence, and trying to enjoy it, even if it was horrible and I thought I was dying. I did a pretty good job, I guess, of keeping my mind in a healthy, good-minded space. Well, because it can like turn so terrible. So, like if the fear gets you, it's over. Then you're panicking. Better way is to accept death and let go and go into the mystery. It's a true mystery. It's a whole nother world, this world of the shamans and of the ayahuasca, and specifically. It's different. Oh.
And I had to say, like, it was not just an experience of facing death. There were kind of fluctuations between an enjoyable experience and kind of a peek into another dimension with different energies and beings, and then like falling back into my sense of self, not wanting to die again anymore. So it was kind of like it fluctuated. There was like I can enjoy this, and then it started like the upward spiral. And usually when I go into that upward spiral, it just goes up and up and up. And I was like, I can enjoy this. And then the whole vibe turned from this serious facing of death into exploring hyperspace, and everything kind of turned and twisted. And I had really interesting like visions of different images that were popping up, just like peeking into a different space of reality and of consciousness. And then I fell back down into my human self, or my ego mind, realizing that it's dying. It's like I was peeking into that space, and then I was like, oh wait, I'm dying right now. It's like, I'm dying, letting go. Well, but that was it. And one interesting question is like, does the ayahuasca know how long you stay at those retreats? Because that's what I've observed with a lot of different people and a lot of different experiences. Some people just have like 1 night or 2 nights of ayahuasca, or 3 nights. Some have a week, some have a month. Some decide to commit to it with a dieta for a month or 2 or 3 or 4. And it's like, because this medicine definitely has an intelligence, and it is very intelligent. But like, does it know like how long you stay at those retreats, how many experiences you have? Because the first week, for example, at this retreat was just a physical purging to prepare me to go a little bit deeper into those realms on the second week. And other people were having still physical purgings in the third week because they were staying for a month. Or just like a really interesting question to contemplate. And I've talked to a lot of people with it, and some people, or most people in the space, they are actually like, yeah, the medicine knows like how long you're here, and like decides on what to work with you. But really interesting questions. And after that experience, like, I didn't knew if I wanted to drink tomorrow, because the next day was the eighth ceremony, the last night of drinking, and I was like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm finished. I'm never ever gonna drink again, and definitely not drinking tomorrow. But because I was kind of scared to go as deep as I went in that night, and I was scared that it would go too deep, because I I got what I asked for. I got more than what I asked for. I was terrified out of my socks, and I was just like, yeah, just like waiting and not feeling ready for the next experience. And even the next day, as I was waking up and I was kind of dozing off, kind of taking a nap in the hammock, I was reliving the experience of falling into death while I was just like wanting to take a nap. And that fear of death, it arose again in me, and again and again. It was a deeply impactful experience for me, and I will come to the interpretation and the integration of this experience in the next video, so where I kind of sum up all my insights and the integration that happened over a year. So definitely stay tuned for that last part of this video series. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that last video. But yeah, that fear of death was still there.
At one point I was even like taking a nap, falling asleep in the hammock. I was kind of dreaming, or yeah, kind of in this sleep-like state, reliving the experience of dying and kind of being afraid to fall asleep, because I was like afraid of the state of dying again, and I had like kind of a light reliving of the experience. And like still felt the effects, and still felt the state very strong in my being the whole day.
And I had fear of drinking again, but everybody told me to drink, so I decided, come on, it's the last night, I will just drink like a tiny little bit, just to end up the retreat. And it was good. So I drank a little sip. I felt like the effects coming on strong, and I was worried that it would turn bad, but I was just like keeping myself here in the physical realm, kind of distracting myself, thinking a lot, opening my eyes, looking around, doing like everything that I would not fall back into that deep experience again. And that's what I did. I was going through my values, for example, just like contemplating a lot of different stuff.
So at one point I was like reflecting upon my values, and I was going through my top 11 values of self-understanding, divine love, health, and I was like staying with one value and like really deeply reflecting upon it, of where I am in my life, of realizing and embodying that value, and what I can do to embody it even more.
I was reflecting upon my past, my future, the present, and it intensified a little bit more, but I stayed grounded. I stayed here, and I stayed in this reality.
I had like really good moments of appreciation for the beauty of this life, just like looking outside, just like being amazed by the power of this medicine, and being having absolute respect for the shamans, like they are incredible human beings, and like all the respect and love for them, and reflecting about my path of wanting to be a shaman and wanting to continue to work with the medicine, was like really beautiful. So that went on And yeah, like just appreciating the beauty of life and of existence, and being grateful for being alive and for being able to experience this life in such its different ways and varieties. And yeah, just the beauty of nature and of like my human body, and of just being alive is amazing, wonderful, really full of wonder. It's a miracle.
And I had kind of a nice appreciation for the experience. I was kind of enjoying the experience, even though it was still tough. Even so, it was still challenging. I was still scared that it would go too deep into the experience. I was kind of waiting for the experience to end. Just like it was rough on the body, it was rough on my mind, and I was just like from the beginning of the experience, I was ready for the experience to end. Which is not the best mindset for such an experience, but as I said, I was still like accepting it. I was kind of enjoying the music. After my reflections, I was even just like continuing to sing songs in my head that came to my mind, like one after another, like rainbow songs, just to not let go into the silence and into that spiral of death again. And that really helped me. And I had kind of some flashbacks from the last night.
And still sometimes I had like flashbacks from the last night. I was reflecting about the last night still and processing it. Couldn't believe it. And yeah, reflecting about it and processing it, just processing it, having flashbacks of it, of what happened in that experience.
And the personal healing at the end with the people, with the shamans, they sing for you and kind of do a little personal healing on you. It got very intense again, but it was still very enjoyable, very nice. And still like the intensity of the experience kind of ramped up a little bit more. It's still intensified. It was still a very intense experience, but I just kind of float with it. I was just kind of dancing through the experience, going through the experience, and then falling asleep. And that was it. I was happy that it was calm and soft, that experience, and that it came to an end.
I'm glad I drank, because otherwise now it's like ending on the right foot, the retreat, and it's not like ending on the foot of being fucking afraid of ayahuasca. Yeah, so that was good going through it, and I'm glad I went through the whole retreat, worked through it. Now it's time to integrate, and yeah, it's good. It's very good. I'm glad it's over. I'm gonna take a little break from ayahuasca till I feel the call again. So thank you.
And those were all my ayahuasca experiences at my 14-day ayahuasca retreat. 8 ceremonies of drinking, and the 7th night being the most intense psychedelic, or just like any experience, the most intense experience of my life. And I really don't know if I did a good job of communicating the seriousness of that experience and the intensity of that experience, because I feel like I cannot transmit the seriousness and the intensity of what I experienced through words and through a video like this. So just like what I talked about, it maybe sounds kind of funny, it sounds kind of serious and intense, but being in that experience, just like you cannot compare your imagination of how intense these experiences can get with the experiences itself. I mean, if you're a psychedelic explorer yourself, you kind of have maybe a little bit of a reference point of how deep those places can go. But even though I had many psychedelic experiences before this one, I was absolutely surprised. I was absolutely stunned and terrified again of how far and how deep it took me, and how intense and physically and mentally challenging and confusing this experience was. And it kind of even traumatized me a little bit. Well, I don't know if traumatized is the right word. I will get to that in the next video where I interpret this experience and talk about my integration process. But it definitely left a mark in me. It definitely impacted my life in a way that was... It definitely impacted my life. I don't know if it was positive or negative. It made... it seemed kind of negative in the first sense, but it was kind of beneficial from the longer term perspective of integrating this experience. But this is it. Those were all my ayahuasca experiences at my 14-day ayahuasca retreat. It shook me to the core of my being. It gave me more than I asked for. It is an incredible medicine. It is a substance that we have to respect, I think, very deeply. And I think we have to be aware of the potentiality of how deep these experiences can go. So I'll see you in the next video next week. As I said, if you want to prepare for your ayahuasca experiences, there's a free worksheet that you can download. It's in the video description down below. Thank you very much for being on this journey with me. I finally shared it. I finally shared this experience. It took me over a year to finally get to a place where I feel like I feel comfortable sharing it. And that was it. I love you all very much. If you're interested and if you want to follow along on seeing my journey with working with these entheogens to continue on this path of self-actualization, self-realization, and kind of living a more authentic and fulfilling life, then subscribe to the channel right now. Share this video with your friends, or share this playlist with your friends who are kind of interested maybe in ayahuasca. And there's gonna be a little bit more ayahuasca stories coming on this channel, so definitely stay tuned. Next week we'll talk about the integration process of those 8 ayahuasca experiences that I went through, and kind of the summary of and a review of the retreat of La Luna de Amazonia and my experience there. And I will definitely see you next week. I love you all very much. Blessings.